Hi, Steve. How are you doing?
Hello, how are you? And hello to my fellow patrons of the Weathersfield Proctor Library.
So
I'm
we,
still reeling in shock. To answer your question, I'm still reeling in shock from a May snowstorm. but we don't have to belabor that.
had a little bit of it here. Actually, it was sort of pretty. Some of the mountainsides were covered, but it was gone by afternoon for the most part.
Yeah, yeah, it's
It's
still cold here, but yeah, perfect weather for reading, which is what I've been doing.
good. So we're probably, because of the signal, going to have a little bit of pauses and halts and all that, but we got through that last time. So we're just going to live with it. And this is one of those
Yeah,
awkward.
it seems to be. Yeah, this is something we're all learning, right? Everybody's doing teleconferencing that didn't do it before.
So we're looking here at the library. The governor's changed the orders, and some libraries are already doing this, but we have held off to see how it works other places and to keep everyone safe. But we're looking at curbside pickup.
No kidding. Starting when?
Well, that's the question. Of course, we have rules we have to follow with personal protective gear for the employees, but we also have to make sure the books and whatever people are picking up is safe for the patrons also. And so we need gloves and sanitizers and something as simple as bags, which is something we don't normally have.
And then how would the procedure work?
So we're working the details out. I'm thinking about moving the picnic table over beside the front sidewalk, and each day people would be notified if theirs was ready for pickup, and we'd have a bag with the name on it alphabetically.
And okay, and in preparation for that, you and your staff would clean the books
But they do,
and then just put them out.
right, with the books, CDC has us just put them aside for 24 hours without being handled.
Ah, okay, okay.
That does not work
Uh,
with
no, no. Uh,
the outside of
now I
DV.
wonder how long that'll be necessary. How long do you think that'll be necessary?
We just have to wait for guidance. We don't know. You know?
Well, I mean, Vermont's numbers in terms of new cases, they're on the steady decline, right? And they never rose that high.
Right, and we would want to keep it that way. We don't want to become a focus of a.
Yeah, the last thing you want is for the headline in New York to be, it seems the epicenter is some small library in Vermont. That's not the kind of press you want.
So, early on, the Department of Libraries had webinars and stuff like this for us. And one of them was the Institute of Museum and Libraries, CDC, Smithsonian Library of Congress. They all got together and did a video class for us with CDC experts on how to handle books and paper.
In the time of COVID.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. I bet you thought you'd never live to see that.
Um, but that's really only one element, right? We've still got to get it to the patron, process it in the building, and keep our employees safe. And those aren't the same rules as paper.
No, no. Have you had? I imagine the answer is yes. But have you've had feedback from your patrons that they want this, right? That they
Yeah.
very much like to start taking books out of the library again. Yes, I would imagine so. So if that is the case, how has barring ebooks gone over? Do you find there's a core of your patronage that still wants to use the library for physical books?
Yeah, I think there's an element where they appreciate that we were able to ramp up the availability. I don't think it fills the entire need, and they're ready for the print book to come back. Just like we see in a
Yeah.
lot of these, they are one of the first things they open, other than libraries. We notice that they're also, for curbside pickup, opening bookstores. And I'm sure you've heard that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a need. That's definitely a need that people have, and by people I mean me. I have missed it. I've missed it enormously. But Massachusetts, our numbers are also in steady decline, but they're astronomically higher than Vermont's. So I don't know when would ever be an ability to go into a bookstore. I don't know when that would happen.
Yeah, the curbside
So it'd have to be.
hybrid, isn't it? It's like almost like online shopping, but not quite.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost like online shopping, only not quite. Like everybody else, like a lot of other bookworms, I have been exploring online book shopping a lot more in the last month than I ever did before in my life. And a lot of it is a crapshoot. You just
Right.
you ask a seller for something, and if they're lying or just mistaken, then you won't get what you want. And there's a huge rigmarole involved in correcting that, in getting them to give you your money back and sending it back to them. Whereas curbside pickup from a library or a bookstore, the person who's going to be providing it to you is knowing, they know what they're doing, so it won't be a mistake, which is nice. But it's still a stopgap. I think people want to go in and hang out. I'm hoping that is possible. Hoping that becomes possible again.
I think about, of course, you have some very famous bookshops in Boston, and then we have little local ones scattered around Vermont. They're an important part of the economy. And I think, when if they have curbside pickup and you have somebody you can talk to, say, well, I'm looking for a mystery, cozy mystery, or, where are we at? It's still different than going to a big online retailer even. It's
Yes,
still
very much so.
that local.
Yeah, there's still expertise involved. Yeah, it's it's not quite the same for me. I'm sure it's not quite the same for you either, but it's better as a stopgap, definitely. My worry is that a lot of those little shops won't be able to survive. I mean, curbside pickup will be a trickle of their normal income.
Right.
And I worry that even in Boston, the rents are astronomical. So I know there's one used bookstore in Boston where the owner of the shop owns the building, but all the others rent. How are they going to survive? If, let's say we get to July, and in July the governor says, well, open your doors to traffic, but everybody has to wear a mask, and you can only have 5 customers in the store at one time.
I think that'll happen.
And they can't stick around. They can't browse. They have to go in.
Right.
How can a store survive that? I mean, that's the amount of money you get from that in the course of a day, you could pay out of your own pocket. No one can keep their business open that under. I worry about things like that. We shall see. We shall see what happens.
When I think
it's so strange that it's not beautiful.
Yeah. When I think about that, I remember back in the 90s and the early 2000s when you started having the online impact of these retailers online. And I think a lot of the smaller bookstores went under from that. Even some major players went under from that. But the next generation of these bookstores, I think, are much more savvy. They're tougher. They have partial online sales anyway, even the used ones. And I think they're a little faster. Yeah. I think without the last 20 years of that winnowing down and that toughening up of the booksellers, they have a much broader base to their sales than just in the buildings usually. And that may say,
yeah, the Strand in New York City
Mhm.
and Powell's, for the last 20 years, there have been people, staff members, who go in. You go in the morning, you look at what you're going to do that day on the schedule. And for the last 20 years, a couple of staff members have their job for the day has been to fulfill online orders. They just go around the store with a basket and fill online orders. That has been an active part of their income for all that time.
And I think that'll help them.
Yeah, it'll help them to stave off disaster. Powell's, for instance, has been online, saying that the sheer amount of online ordering that they've seen is astronomical. It's allowed them to bring all of their staff back with insurance, with benefits.
Right.
That is fantastic. The fans of Powell's Bookstore rallied around them and just did their ordering online. And Powell said the same thing that you're saying. They said, well, it's our workers who will be in the warehouse filling these orders, and we will just be sure to be careful. We'll make sure that they are protected, that you're protected. So this might take a little longer. And their fans, that shows you the worth of building good community relations. They'll be there for you when you need them. Of course, I wish the bookstores in Boston did that, but they don't. They don't do that at all. They don't have any aspect like that.
But this is a thing right now where, of course, being a library, you're part of the community. You're an institution in the community. But one of the things, just serve, regular group of citizens. We serve all aspects of the community. It's like we do daycares, which are a big question. But businesses matter to us. So anything we can do for businesses, and not just facilities and electronics, we already do, but to keep that base part of our business going, which is service to any kind of business.
Yeah. I think it's only when your library is physically closed that you realize how much more you used it for than just books. How much more important it was than just that. It was a place to go. It was a place to see people and all sorts of resources. But if it's closed there, well, you've done a lot. You've done as much as you can, right, to keep the library of service to its patrons, even though the doors are closed.
Right, but we used to have an awful lot of business meetings in here. We have spaces where they could, or two people from different towns are coming in to meet and talking business. We've had people in here planning their business in town and get it onto ground. But before they could do that, they use our computers, they use our copiers, our fax lines, and local knowledge.
Your Wi-Fi, right? I bet a lot of people found your Wi-Fi very handy because it's nice and strong and it's right there. It's at their disposal.
Right. Yeah. Well, we have people in the parking lot right now.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. What a melancholy thing it must have been for you. I think I wrote to you at the time how weird it must have been for you. Just a diehard librarian, the library director in your bones, how it must have felt for you to usher out the door your last customer for the foreseeable future. So the last person out the door, it's not you're going to open at 9 the next morning. It's that you don't know when you'll be open again. That must have shook you, as the kids say.
I don't remember who it was. We will.
So you're not
open.
You're not sure when the curbside pickup will start. It's really up to you to determine when all the pieces are in place.
I have to make sure that we have the gear to take care of the staff. I have to make sure that we have the cleaning gear where it's appropriate, say for DVDs, that sort of thing. I have to make sure that there's a system in place to pick up books, and then there's a way to drop them off. And then once the books are dropped off, the books themselves go into quarantine for at least 24 hours. So they have to be marked in back somewhere, and they have to be separate from everybody. And then I have to have forms and ways for people to take those books out and say what they want. So we're in the process of doing that, but it's fairly complicated. Then we have to make sure we're following all the state rules. And then, of course, I work with the town because they're in the process of opening things too. And so they're a good sounding board for me, right? I can call, say, hey, what are you guys doing? This is what we're doing. If you have any critiques of it, give it to me. Let me hear it now before I open it.
Right.
What I mean?
Right.
And they
But
do
the
the
schools are closed.
schools
Right?
are,
Schools are closed for the rest of the year, for the rest through the summer. Okay.
yeah, I believe so. I don't know if they have summer programs of any kind, what the restrictions on those are. I would imagine there's some, so,
And does your area of southern Vermont do a lot of tourist business?
yes, yeah.
Hmm.
So far from us are some big ski areas. Of course, there's fishing and there's camping and there's all this stuff in here. We have this campground right down the road, and then we have a state park right down the road, the other direction. So,
And those things will be affected, right?
yeah, I would.
I mean, the campgrounds have got to be closed right now, right?
I haven't seen anybody in them. I'm not sure what the rules on campers are. If you have your own like camper and you have certain distances, I don't know how that works. I usually don't. I do get campers in here at the library because as one of the ways of supporting local business, we support the campers. Even though they're not residents of Weathersfield, we have ways of getting them either books that are donated or stuff like this. We try to support those businesses. And I don't usually see people, it still would be a couple of weeks until I would normally start to have the campers show up at the library. That will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I've been watching just the story of libraries in general across the country as they adapt to this, because, well, we've talked about this many times that before this pandemic, before 2020, libraries were at an all-time high of not only popularity ratings, but also use.
Right.
Flying right in the face of the long predicted death of the book. The libraries are more popular than ever.
As our
place
book,
to gather, as a place to use Wi-Fi, a million different things. And that makes it all the more ironic that in 2020 that's suddenly come to a halt, just across the board, a halt. I've watched some of the things that the Boston Public Library is doing, some of the things that the New York Public Library is doing, some of the a lot. It sounds like a lot of the same thing. They're just trying to make the best of whatever they can to make sure that, because, well, you must know this. Patrons who love libraries, it becomes a vital part of their day, it becomes a vital part of their week.
Mhm.
To have that suddenly gone,
but
it's been
now and looking at the background, obviously you're a professional book person, but looking at your background, you have a home library.
I do have a home library. Yes, I do. But it's not the same
No.
as, I mean, you do too. You have an enormous home library, but there are things you find at the library that you don't have at home, that I wouldn't have at home. Like, well, for instance, later this year, it was planned. I don't know if it will happen. There's allegedly in the works a tribute volume of short stories in honor of the memory of Gardner Dozois.
That would be wonderful,
The science fiction anthology. And it would be wonderful. He's made so many friends in the industry over the decades that there's an idea of a tribute volume to sort of cap off his annual series, the year's best science fiction. And the natural thing for somebody like me, for instance, if that book ever comes into existence, I'm going to want to write about it.
Right.
And that's what the library is for. I don't have everything he's ever edited. It would be impossible to have everything he's ever edited. I can go to the library and get a huge amount of that stuff. Or if, for instance, later on in the year, I believe late in 2020 or early in 2021, there's apparently a new big high-profile translation of Sentimental Education.
Okay.
And not at the library, not only can I get every other English language translation of that, but I can also get, or interlibrary loan, a copy in the original. So that the library is, I don't know how I got by for so long not using it. It's an incredible resource. Plus, I know a lot of people at both the libraries that I go to in Boston, and I miss that. I miss seeing them and talking to them. You must get that from your patrons, right? They must miss just coming in and chewing the fat.
We get emails, we get notes, and we get phone calls, and that it's vital for us to have that. That's very important to us. You mentioned interlibrary loan. Of course, here that's been on hold.
It would have to be, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but it's going to come in a matter of weeks. So that's also being restarted. And that requires a courier. They go all over the state. That requires that.
Yeah, that requires
when we go online.
just lots and lots more precautions, right?
Right, because they're in the mail or they're in the courier bin. They're sort of quarantined anyway. But we have to have somebody on the other end answering those computer inquiries about the volume. So if the other library isn't open that has volume, I can't get it.
And if it's not too much librarian nitty gritty, how does that work? If somebody were to come into your library in, let's be honest, a small town, it's a small town library, somebody come into your library and wanted something that, let's say there was a copy in California. Can you reach that far to get an interlibrary loan, or does your network only go to New England?
No, we can go there. So what we have,
really,
we have a specialist that works here, and she does the interlibrary loans, and it's its own computer network. And you have to have a tremendous amount of knowledge to do it. And it stacks how she searches by distance, by those groups, but it's an entirely different computer system. It's called Clover, and it searches everywhere. And we have volumes that are very specialized that may come from quite a distance. That somebody really. But if it's a bestseller, and it may come from just up the road. I mean, it just matters.
Right. But it could also be that one special book that exists in some collection in Oklahoma, and you could still get that given time.
Right. And we do that. We had somebody researching business, that was here 40 or 50 years ago. And they found a book written about that business, and the only copy was in another state. So, this does happen. We do find things like that. She's quite amazing at her job, and the constant changing nature of the computer part of that work is it never ends. It's they're constantly updating. So, over her career, she's seen everything from interlibrary loans via telephone, now searching the entire country. So.
Wow. But that's on hold.
That I have to sort of get the ball going. I received from the Department of Libraries asking when I wanted to start up. So when I start it up, I have to have protocols in place, like you were saying, for the bin. They come in big plastic bins. Mm-hmm. And so that has to come in on a certain day, so I have to make sure the building is manned. The bin comes in, it's put off to the side, we have a date and time on it. Then we can open it up, and then there's a whole procedure for processing those books to get them to the patron. Then you have to have the patron come in and get them. So we'll get there, but I'll probably start that up in a matter of weeks.
But not everything is on hold. I've noticed on the website, the Children's Hour, the children's storybook reading, that's going full ahead. It's great fun.
That's such a wonderful job. But we wonder about that too, because we have now that look like some folks are going back to work with restrictions. Are going back to work. Businesses are opening with restrictions. And one of the services we provide is to license daycares in our town. We of course provide a librarian to go read to those children and provide books and do all these other things.
Oh,
We,
wow.
you know, but
But surely that will take it some time to get back up and running.
I think some, and I don't know exactly, but I think they have daycare for essential workers.
Hmm.
You know, like hospital workers, people like this that have to go to work. They have to have some sort of daycare, right?
Yeah, yeah. Although I can't help but look wistfully at Vermont's infection rates. It's just, I mean, it's not a very populous state, but even so, oh my, it's just amazing. It's just amazing that, I mean, I guess Vermont adopted safe practices fairly early and fairly firmly,
Yes.
and that has certainly paid off because your peak was never very high, and your numbers are dropping fast. That is great. I wish that were true for Massachusetts.
Yeah, but I mean, not everybody in town, because we have clusters of villages and hamlets and then more widespread stuff. But a lot of things we're finding, depending on the weather, is we have enough land so my children can run outside and play. You know, there's parts of the
Yeah, quite
country.
a different story. I know quite a few young parents in New York who've been cooped up with their children in the same 5 rooms for a month and a half, with virtually no ability to go outside.
But now we don't take them shopping or anything with us. And, you know, when we have to food shop, kids don't go, but at least they can go outside.
And do you get the impression that your kids and everybody else's kids up there are adapting well to this new reality?
I think that's a great question. I can see my kids, I have three, you know them well. They are each very different. Um, and then, of course, I think the library's real concern is, so you mentioned earlier we have Wi-Fi. And I think they fixed up the school's Wi-Fi so you that. that- My concern, of course, is a lot of this schoolwork is being done online, and I worry that not every rural child has access to Wi-Fi.
Right, right. That's one of the stories coming out of this whole pandemic is inequality. It's underscoring who has access to privileged stuff and who doesn't.
Right.
Including, I mean, not just healthcare, but also everything else, all sorts, all the online stuff. Everyone
Right.
has shunted automatically to online, and the assumption on too many people's part is that everybody in America has access, and they don't. That's not equal access. So, yeah, what do you do? What do you do
Right.
with a kid who has no access to the internet except when he's at school? If he can't go to school anymore, what do you do with that kid? How do you not lose him?
So I think that'll be one of the most interesting things to come out of this as a librarian is when I start hearing what the schools say. Okay, how many kids did find on this deal? How many were able to be consistent with their online stuff? And then, of course, we'll also be interested to find out because we try to provide for those for the workers also, because they can park in the parking lot and use the Wi-Fi, but now they don't have access to our laptops they used to have. Is there
Right,
a
right.
so person A keeps their job and works from home, and just because of something like a Wi-Fi or a computer, person B ends up unemployed. So
Hmm.
so how do we deal with that going
I wonder
forward?
what I wonder what the very youngest children think, though. I mean, the the youngest ones who know that their whole world has changed, but maybe you can't explain to them why. I don't. Younger than your youngest, maybe a year younger than your youngest. What would those kids? What are they making of any of this? Where
Yeah,
one time they could go to the library and they look forward to it,
right.
and now they're told they can't, and they don't understand the reason. I can't go to the library, can't go to school, can't go to the store, can't go out with your friends,
Right.
and no real way to explain why. That must be so hard.
Yeah, well, we just had Elias's birthday, and there was no one there.
No one there, no one for the birthday, but nothing he did wrong. It's
Right.
That's got to be a tricky line for you to walk.
Parents are doing that all over the place. I mean, usually in this building, we're not traditional in the sense that we love noise in the library. And a lot of times that noise pack of 8 or 9 kids descending at once in this little building. And it's time since we've heard that here.
I don't think I'd want to face it as a job to do. I don't have to explain anything to my little schnauzer. The world hasn't changed for her at all. She's chewing on my finger right now, and she chewed on my finger in 2019. That hasn't changed at all.
So yeah, we will see. So yeah, we have plans in place. We appreciate you doing these talks with us, by the way. It's good to hear from you.
My pleasure.
We also very
The
much.
closest I've come yet to meeting. I haven't met any patrons yet. It's the closest I've ever come to meeting my fellow patrons. I write for them, but I have not met them.
Bring up before we.
Someday you will have a library event, and I will go. Someday that will happen.
Will happen. But I did want to throw out there that you have continued to write for us, and everybody can go to Ex Libris on the website, and we still get your articles.
And the newsletter. Our late lamented newsletter. We had such plans for it. That'll happen too. That'll happen too. You patrons, though, you just don't know. Mark and I had the most beautiful newsletter in the world that we were ready to give you. and then the world changed and we couldn't do it. But the electronic version of the newsletter is up on the website, right?
Yes, yeah, and we'll pick that up. It'll be after
We'll pick it back up
when we get back on our feet.